the situation we have today, when the United States of America is led by a blithering idiot who you wouldn't send out to buy a loaf, but who's sitting there right now with the nuclear football at the foot of his desk, that if he presses will bring about the end of all humanity. How serious is that? A Congress of people on the make, of people insider trading, of people engaged in corrupt practices of all kinds. Two political parties, virtually as toxic as each other, completely ruling the roost and continuing to try and rule the world. What's happening in Ukraine is an American war. Almost everyone can see that now. We've got a poll running. Are you ready to die for Ukraine? Tens of thousands of people have voted. 92% of us are not ready to die for Ukraine. I wonder about the 8%. That's a lot of residents of Ward 5 in Broadmoor Hospital for the criminally insane. Who are you? 8%. Call the show and explain why you are ready to die for Ukraine. It's an American war. Almost everyone can now see it. It wasn't unprovoked. Putin is not a maniac who woke up one morning and decided to attack his neighbor. This war has been in the making in Washington for years. And the European satrapies of the United States empire, the vassals, like Macron, poor Mbappe, didn't just lose the World Cup final despite scoring a hat-trick. He had to endure Macron hugging him, trying to console him at the end, adding insult to injury. These vassals, Macron, Johnson, Sunak, whoever it was that came in between them, little soldier Schultz, and the people whose names we don't even know, that are the vassals in most of the European countries. They're not making any decisions. If they were, their own economies wouldn't be being visibly destroyed in front of the eyes of their people. These decisions are being made by that blithering idiot in Washington. How far down we've come. From Jack Kennedy, who diffused the Cuban Missile Crisis by intelligence and diplomacy, to the blithering idiot Joe Biden, who has dragged us all to the cusp of war, because that poll question is not an academic one. You, even though you voted in overwhelming numbers that you were not ready to die for Ukraine, might still have to die for Ukraine. Make no mistake about this. The world has never been closer to a nuclear catastrophe than it is right now. The Russians are deploying their nuclear weapons right now, showing it on television. They're openly discussing changing their nuclear doctrine, hitherto setting their face against any first use of nuclear weapons. Why are they doing this? Because they can see that the NATO countries, including yours, are determined upon war after war after war after war, and that they will never stop until they have succeeded or died, succeeded in their mission to regime change Russia, to divide it, break it up, balkanize it, like they did with Yugoslavia, steal its resources, steal its oil, its gas, its gold, its nickel, all of its precious metals, all of its timber, all of its ore, all of its land, the biggest country in the world. They will not stop until they have been stopped or they succeed. And China knows that she is next. China knows acutely that she is next. And so a situation has developed in the world, almost Orwellian in its sweep of permanent war, stretched out before us for the rest of our lives and even the lives of our children, should they survive this period of permanent war. War for resources, war for power, war for riches, war for hegemony, dominance, war for direction of international events and the control of other people's national sovereignty. That's the future that Russia can see, which is why these great missiles of theirs that could land almost in an instant on any European capital and not very much later on any American city are now there, pictured for the first time, bristling with defiance. This is not our war, and yet Britain is deeply involved in it. Its soldiers are deeply involved in it. Its treasury is funding it. Its politicians are seeking and helping to direct it. Our special forces have now admitted that they're actually fighting in the war. None of us agreed to this. None of us were asked to agree to it. Even the puppet parliament in London was not trusted to be asked for this involvement. Britain, after the United States, is the number one villain in this picture. And so if the shooting starts, if the nuclear weapons begin to fly, be sure that they'll land on London, Birmingham, Manchester, Liverpool, Glasgow, before anywhere else. Our leaders have made us amongst the most hated of countries in the world. We don't like to say it, we don't like to hear it, but it's true. The United States, once loved, admired, copied, emulated, is now the most hated country in the world. The tectonic plates have shifted, not just in Qatar this evening in the World Cup final. They are shifting volubly, visibly, on every level, because it's now a race against time. Can the world change before it is destroyed?